Hi guys, we've got Ando on today. He's a hosts his own podcast. It's Burn Babylon Burn / The Doom Kitchen. So check that out on YouTube. And yeah, Ando, do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself and why your channel has two different names?
Oh, well, so Burn Babylon Burn it's kind of more like a topical news show, just whatever's going on in the week. We just pick it apart. I used to do it completely with one guy, but now I rotate the guests on that. Kind of started doing that after I spun off the Doom Kitchen. The Doom Kitchen was just interviews and deep dives, conversations, stuff like that. Just, we'll just take a subject every now and then and go into it. A lot of times, whatever subject we intended on, we don't even get into it. But um, yeah, so there's the news show, and then there's the kind of, I guess, talk show.
Right. Okay. How long have you been doing Burn Babylon Burn for?
I think, let's see, the first one was January 21, and we were doing them just whenever we felt like, and then I got it to be a weekly thing after a while, and then and now everything is just, I can't juggle my job with this, so it comes out when it comes out. You get what you get.
Yeah. So what was it that what made you want to set up a podcast / YouTube channel?
Well, I listen to shows all the time. I drive for a living, truck driver, hence the reason I'm in a truck right now. But yeah, I listen to shows all day long, and I guess really what I don't spend a whole lot of time watching news or reading or any of the things that I should be doing, but I'm getting an idea of what's really going on from a bunch of perspectives that I enjoy.
Yeah. So you said that you set up Burn Babylon Burn in 2021, which is sort of slap bang in the middle of the pandemic. Was it sort of don't want to say pandemic inspired, but I mean that sort of woke a lot of people up, right?
Oh yeah, I I was not going to do anything because I think that there's enough stuff out there, and I was at the Tom Woods 2000th episode, and I'm out front smoking, and I met Mud out there, and he's talking to me about it, and then he says we got to do a show, and I'm like, nah, there's plenty of shows, and everybody's doing shows. So uh one day I was driving, and he's like, hey, when do you finish driving today? Probably an hour or two. Let's do a show. And so we started recording. The first one, we were actually talking about the Ukraine situation. I got into that one a lot. So
Yeah, I think it's similar to how me and Aaron set it up because um, I know prior to the pandemic we would talk about a lot of stuff and be interested in a lot of stuff, but we always would have just thought, yeah, there's enough shows out there. Why would we do one? Have that in our back of our mind. But at the end of the day, it's like the shows obviously for the audience, but as much as it's for the audience, it's also for us as well. It's a way it's sort of like an excuse for us to talk to people like yourself and just get on a call and talk things over. And obviously, we can archive it nicely and put it all out there. But it feels like a great sort of motivator to keep going and keep learning about the world. And because yeah, it was similar to you. I'm a desk worker, but all day at my desk, I'm constantly listening to other people talk on podcasts. I don't really listen to mainstream news, and that's where I acquired a lot of my knowledge about the world is just from listening to other people's conversations. So I 100% agree. What sort of would you say the main differences are in the world today from before the pandemic to now? Like, how do you see the difference? How is life, even for yourself? How is life for you now in comparison to how it was before the pandemic?
well, even now we're seeing a lot of things, I guess, come back. There was that, just the way the news was during that time, and they're constantly trying to scare you, and of course when you're like us, you know that it's a scam, but that presentation. I think that they realized that they have to shelf that for the next scam that they run, because they were always so serious, and this is such a life or death, this and that, and just, and the idea that of dividing everybody, the way that so many things came out during that time. My family member will not take the thing, or or this person believes that about this, how to deal with people, and so they cut a whole bunch of friends off during that whole situation, and the media was very complicit in it.
Yeah. I feel like with the way the media was then, because to a large degree it worked what the media were trying to do. It did work. I know it did wake a lot of people up, but a lot of people that did wake up do fall back asleep quite easily because of just the way the manipulation works. And you kind of see it. You can see it as you've said that you talk about. You saw it quite easily with the Ukraine war. That, because it's a war and everyone takes it at face value that wars are bad. They played on that so easily and so well from like the get go. But for the likes of us who are more awake than a lot of people, I sort of took it in stages where I was like, yeah, war's bad, but what's actually going on? And then you see a little bit more information come out, then a little bit more, then a little bit more, then a little bit more. And now you sort of, what was it that came out the other day that they accidentally sent $6 billion to Ukraine accidentally? Like, that's insane. That could even be an accident.
Yeah, they just find extra money all the time. You can tell though, what with this especially, that this is what the government over all of the governments really wants to do, because of one, who's pushing it, all of the same people that are for, they were for the COVID agenda, they're for the trans agenda, they're all for the same stuff. They as some people put it, they support the current thing, and they've got their people. They've got. I mean, the weirdest thing about all this is the way the internet is gotten. You've got there's a troll farm of kids that dress up with Doge and blindly support NATO, and I mean, this is the new generation of warfare where we're seeing this kind of stuff happen in front of us.
Yeah, I find, especially with the Ukraine war, I find it so confusing because the mainstream narrative's one thing, but then you're listening to alternative media or independent sources, and sometimes I don't know whether they're just spouting out Russian propaganda, and I don't know where the actual truth lies. It obviously lies somewhere in the middle, but where is it? More on that side or more on our side, or more on the mainstream media side? You just don't know.
Yeah, that's kind of hard, because I know some things apparently have slipped into the alternative media that are supposed Russian talking points, and I decided that I don't care if whatever I'm doing is against the globalist regime, if it's against what Klaus Schwab really wants, or Valerie Newland and her gang of neocons, if it's against what they want, then I don't care if I don't think that there's anything really even wrong with it. I mean, this country spouts propaganda 24/7. If I'm doing just regular news, I'm spouting United States propaganda by accident.
Yeah, because it's sort of like instilled in you without you even realizing that it is. Yeah, and that's from birth, basically, because you go through an upbringing from your parents who have had education in the US, and then you go through education yourself. So it's sort of instilled with you, and I guess it takes a minute to like pop out of that vacuum, because it's a bit of a weird feeling, right? Like when was it that you would say you woke up in general?
I mean, I've woken up and gone back to sleep a few times. Back in 2003, I worked in radio, and someone introduced me to Alex Jones, and so I got really deep into the 9/11 stuff, And it's funny because I was already a libertarian at that time. I no longer consider myself one, but yeah, I was in that stuff. I was working in media, and then I'm learning about 9/11, an event that happened while I was working radio news. So I was a producer, a board operator while it was going on. It didn't happen during my shift. I was relieving the morning person whose shift that it happened on. It was actually an easy day. There was, everybody was kind of in panic mode in the newsroom, but the network pretty much covered everything. But I remember watching Building 7 fall, and I turned to one of the anchors and I said, "That seems weird. That one wasn't on fire. It didn't get hit by a plane. That's kind of weird." And he said, "A lot of weird stuff happened today." And so I was always had some sort of suspicion, and then I started getting into all the 9/11 documentaries at that time, and eventually, I kind of went real deep, got into the David Icke stuff, and decided that I really just had to get out of the United States. And in about 2005, I kind of shelved all of this stuff and went off to live in New Zealand. And when I came back, I spent many years trying to stay outside of the system, so I didn't really pay attention to the system. And I think that was actually really blue pilling, and maybe necessary, because I was getting a little wild back then. And and so I had some ideas at that time that I would consider left libertarian today, and I would really, if it came down to it right now, I would be arguing with my former self on a lot of things, especially about the things that cause cultural decline. And plus, at that time, I hadn't found Jesus at that time, and that's what I really think that, as somebody that's getting into all of this stuff, that is really one, he's our only comfort in this situation. If you don't have Jesus, this whole thing is a black pill, because we're going to have a really hard time. And even if, the tides turn in some way, all the damage that's done it's going to be a miserable situation no matter what.
Yeah, I think that is definitely true with the religion or spirituality aspect of it, because, well, when me and Aaron started this, we were in no way religious, or I would say even spiritual. Well, personally, I considered myself interested in spirituality, but I wouldn't by any means call myself spiritual at that time. But the more we talked to people, and the more we found out sort of the dark, gloomy side of the world, it seemed like the more you learned about the darkness, the more light was opening up on sort of like the other half of your mind. And then through just conversation and conversation, I was like, there's no alternative to the darkness apart from the fact that there is a God. And many people perceive God in many different ways, but it all sort of factors into a similar sort of message that there is a higher being, a higher power than yourself. And yeah, I think it's like spot on, definitely where I'm at in my journey at the moment. That you need to attach yourself to something like that. It definitely like multiple effects if you're going to be attaching yourself to the dark gloom of the world. But there was a guy that we spoke to not long ago called Brandon. I don't know if you've heard of Escaping Reality.
I hadn't checked that one out.
Okay, so he's well, he gave us a really good conversation at a really good sort of moment in both of our lives, where he helped us realize that the spirituality side of it is like you need to find the good in all the evil that's happening and find a balance between the two. So then the way we now look at anything that's going on, or the way we're trying to get to a level where we can look at anything that's going on, either good or bad, we sort of take the good and bad away from it and just see it for what it is, and see it for what the experiences and what we can learn from it, and how we can progress as sort of better beings from the things that are happening. And I'm trying to implement that more, definitely when I'm looking at the World Economic Forum, because stuff is, well, it's crazy and it's happening right in front of us and right under our feet. So it is quite a challenging moment. But yeah, like I definitely just want to say, like, I agree with you 100% on having that religious side or spiritual side with you on your journey can definitely take you to where you need to go.
Yeah, because I think when you focus too much on the globalists and WEF and what their agenda is, it just gives you such a bleak outlook of what's going to happen in the future. But if you can sort of shift your focus and focus on the good and the spiritual aspect of life, it just feels like you know what's going on in the real world, like in the physical world, but you know there's light at the end of the tunnel, there's light there. So it gives you that sort of sense of hope and freedom.
Yeah, noticing what they're attacking is really the thing. And so, we going back to the Ukraine thing, they're attacking Putin. You saw how they attacked Trump. You saw how when y'all are in England, I'm thinking, right? And you'll remember when Brexit happened and Bolsonaro, basically anyone that's nationalism is being attacked, and and it's kind of okay. Well, I know Corbett just had a recent episode with Ernie Hancock where he says that it's just a precursor to globalism, but I think that they can't, for some reason, they can't manage it because it is, you know, it is a governmental system, and it's got its flaws for sure, but at the same time, it is pro the people. So the people within that state are being pushed ahead of everybody else, and it could be at the expense of the world, but they don't give a flying f because like that. If they did, they would be globalists. So um, when you look at the globalism and the intricacies of it, like what's going on in France and Belgium right now is something that was put in motion whenever they started the EU. And how did they start the EU? They just started it without telling anybody, and then they had a formal agreement. And then a few years later, they celebrate 50 years of the EU, and they're like, "Hey, this was only a few years ago. How are you celebrating 50?" And they're like, well, it really happened around then, but the EU was designed to destroy the cultures of Europe.
Mm. Do you think with the globalist powers and what they're sort of doing, because the way I see it is they've how could I explain this? So they've kept the card close to their chest, but they've laid out a card here and there. And what it feels like since the pandemic and all the other sort of things that have transpired from then is they've just sort of chucked all the cards down and said, "Look, this is what we're doing. We've been teasing you with it here and there." But it begs me to think that they've been putting these cards down, leaving us to see how we all react, and then been like, "Oh yeah," they forget about it after a couple of years. And they've seen that happen multiple times. Oh, we'll put another card down. Oh, they all forget about it. Do you think they've just thought, well, let's just now's the right time? Well, it's kind of like a two-sided question. So, do you think they've put them all down thinking it's the right time, and it's not the right time? Because it certainly feels like there will be a revolution that would happen from this if they were to do this at this time. But then at the same time, on another side of me, feels like, hang on, it might be the right time because if you look at the way the sort of progressive movements like the LGBTQ are actually flying, then it makes you think maybe maybe they have timed this correctly because people are listening to what they want them to do.
I I don't know what they're doing. I think that they all have this agenda, and it's what the main goal of it all is. It seems like it's depopulation on a lot of these things. And so you've got endocrine disruptors and fabric softeners. You've got all the things that are ending up in the water. You've got the things that the medical pharma industry is dumping into things, agriculture. It's a multi-front thing, and then it's also cultural, and they're promoting homosexuality openly. While that is, that leads to depopulation, then they're ruining relationships with this porn industry. Every single road leads to the same thing, and that was all the Club of Rome agenda.
Sorry, can you expand on the Club of Rome agenda?
The Club of Rome wants to, it's designed to depopulate. I could get you some of their documents if you give me a second. Go ahead and chat for a little bit, and I'll give you the purpose or whatever.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, because I forgot who it was we were talking to. Oh, it was Loomis, right? He was talking about the UN's sustainable goals, and one of them was depopulation. But when you look at the rest of their goals, that's like the wild card, right? That's the wild one where it's depopulation, and everyone's like, well, when you look at the rest of them, they all seem like, oh, these are good for the earth, these are good for the earth, these are good for human population. But then when you actually look into the ones you think are good, they're actually contributing towards depopulation in
It all leads to that one
yeah,
one point.
in crazy ways.
He said as well, what was the organisation that he talked about where they predicted a 50% decrease in population by 2025?
Yeah, there's a lot of informations on this. This was back in, I want to say it was the 70s. Paul Ehrlich wrote the population bomb, and so then it goes back even before that to Lord Malthus, and they call it Malthusian whenever you're talking about these depopulation things. I'm a truck driver. I'm all over the country, and I would say that it's definitely not overpopulated. There's the people that think it's overpopulated, they must just live in cities and see, because when you're crammed together in a city, then you see the repercussions of being around too many people. And so I can see how city dwellers have this idea that we're overpopulated, and then the promotion of scarcity on everything. Oh, we're going to run out of this. Water's not going to be clean. Air's not going to be clean, and all the things that come from that. And then you add in the climate factor that they're trying to slam on us at this point. It all leads down the same road, that they want less people. Less people are easier for them to manage, and they think that they can accomplish this a lot easier now that there's artificial intelligence, and they can use that to get things from one place to another, or run whatever things that they don't need a subservient class to do. And that, I mean, that's all of us. We're the working class people. We're the subservient class to the empire. So they're trying to eliminate us, and they think that their computers can do that, and their robotics and all of their silly inventions. I'm interested in seeing that backfire on them, but the problem with that is that they actually have to depopulate us first for that to happen.
Is it true that you can fit the whole of the world population in the state of Texas?
I don't know. I wouldn't want to see that. I'm from Texas, so I would definitely not like to see the whole world there. But yeah, it doesn't really take that much space for a person to live, and you can see these high towers and things like that, and places they've got that thing coming to I believe it's Saudi Arabia, that they call it the line, and it's this long condo basically, and you can go from one side of it to the other with the high speed rail that's in it. But yeah, that's really what they want for us. You can see that coming out with their 15-minute city ideas, is that because they can't manage all of this stuff with while they're purposefully trying to get rid of us. That's why they're trying to replace so many things with robotics.
Well, my question to depopulation is why have they got to be so sort of savage with it? Why do they need to? Because when China did the one child policy, that was to try and depopulate, right? There were way too many people there. But that's a bit more of a less aggressive way, right? Because you're not murdering millions of people in crazy different ways. I don't do you have any thoughts around why they've decided to go down this savage fast track route rather than in a bit
Well,
more
it's
of a
it's not it's not all savage. It like I said, they're culturally tricking us into it ourselves. I'm 43 and I don't have kids, and I fell right into their psyop. But they've promoted this in so many ways, right down to just the general relationships between men and women, and hookup culture, and just really the promotion of vice and all of the things that go with that. So that's the soft kill, and there's softer, and then there's the hard one. But that one's really war, and that's why they always have these wars going, and they send off the healthiest, fittest people to the meat grinder all the time.
Well, I guess they're promoting it in a way where they're changing the culture to make it feel so to make society feel like they're making the decision, not the government or people's in power. Whereas when they're trying to say, "Oh, you can only have one kid," people are like, "Why are you taking away my freedom to have as many kids as I want?" Whereas this way, they've been manipulated by the media to think, well, to promote homosexuality and hookup culture, like you said, Ando. So it makes it feel like it's your choice, not the government or not the powers that be's choice.
Mm, yeah, that does make a lot of sense. Because it's everywhere. It's so in all the we've had this discussion on the pod before when I love movies, but I just can't watch any recent movies that come out because you can just see the underlying message behind them all. You need to be. It's obviously weaken the men. That's the one of the messages that they portray in a lot of them. And I'm not saying it in a way where like women shouldn't be put on a pedestal where they can be a lead actress as a superhero or whatever. That can happen, but you've not got to devalue men on the way. And then the other side of it is there's so many things I've watched recently where within the opening 3 to 5 minutes, there's either a lesbian scene, a gay scene, or something of that sort of nature. So it is getting embedded into us.
Even in like was it a Buzz Lightyear film? They had a gay kissing scene in there, didn't they? That's for
Yeah.
children.
Yeah, and I've spent, I guess, a lot of my 20s and 30s in a party scene, hanging out with people that you know that have lifestyles like that. I've got a lot of gay friends, or at least have had. Some of them probably wouldn't talk to me these days. That's fine with me. But one of my older friends understands what I say. Whenever I tell him this stuff, and he's actually pretty well against the crazy trans agenda right now. And a lot of people have made the great point that the trans agenda plays into the transhumanist agenda, which all plays into the anti-human agenda. It leads to what they call post-humanism. So, and yeah, uh, I'm for life continuing on, and whatever they're trying to provoke, if that ends up being something from Revelation, then so be it. I'm really hoping that this is just another Tower of Babel moment where it's just build it up and get it knocked down, because that's what needs to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of people are hoping that it's just one of those moments. Earlier, you mentioned like, how they're going to use AI to obviously contribute towards depopulation. What sort of methods do you think they could use with AI?
Well, it's in everything, and the funny part is that I'm seeing that they're using it now in order to help doctors, and so okay, doctors, that's a pretty special job. That's something that a lot of people would aspire to make a ton of money. And now if they're going to get replaced by AI, they're talking about replacing us as far as truck drivers go. I've seen their self-driving experiments. The battery part of that is not going to work. That's something that is absolutely not going to work. That's going to be a huge mess. And in a few years from now, we're going to be laughing at the fact that we tried to run all of these things off batteries. And that'll be kind of the joke of this generation, I think, is that we tried to stick batteries into massive vehicles hauling massive freight, and that it'll go like 10 miles and need a recharge. It's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, with AI replacing jobs, it's obviously going to lead to massive unemployment. But then I've heard a lot of people talk about it in two ways. Like it can either be, it can either lead to like Great Depression with everyone because they'll have no value in the world. But then people use like, oh, it will inspire creativity, which I was on board with to begin with. But recently, I've sort of thought, no, it's not. Like the world as we see it is not set up for anyone to be creative, really, unless you go out of your way to be creative. And the massive amount of people that are out there today, if their jobs were to be taken off them, they wouldn't themselves go and be like, okay, I need to find something creative, because a lot of people are sort of robots to the system anyway, where they need to be told what to do. I need to go to school, go to university, get a job in an office. That's what everyone knows that they need to do, and that's fine. That works. They get financial reward from it, and then they can go and party or do whatever they need to do with the money. But take that job out of them, then you probably wouldn't really need education. You'd probably get a different sort of education, I'm guessing. But then they push them out into the open world, give them a check every month, $1,000 or pounds or 2,000 or whatever you need to survive off. All they're going to do is go and play video games, watch Netflix, and eat crappy food. That's it. So I struggle to see where, unless the infrastructure is built for people to be creative, innovative, and come out with these new crazy inventions that probably would benefit the world. Instead, it's going to see the opposite, where people are just going to deteriorate in their own rooms.
Everything great has happened because somebody wanted to struggle. Like new frontiers have been found, adventure, things like that. That all comes from struggle. And sure, a job would get in the way of that. And if this is happening, this is gonna happen. It will be some sort of UBI thing. They started throwing out the trial balloons a few years ago on that, and we already have it in some cases. But if you look at populations that have their resources dumped on them, and they're usually subpar resources, they don't really. You don't see anything great coming from them. Welfare is another kind of soft kill. It's like a kill them with kindness thing. Oh, we're going to take care of all your problems, but nobody's doing anything special or innovative, and then they're left with all that free time that turns into something that doesn't make the world a better place.
Yeah, I think you guys definitely see it in America the same way we see it in the UK, because when we've got people, what we call on benefits, which is the same thing as you guys have there, when you see them areas that are populated with people on benefits, they've got alcohol shops, betting shops, pubs, all of the sort of, I don't know how you would sum them up, but negative businesses around them. But then when you go to places that are populated with people that I would say how we would probably call them in the past, maybe middle class, upper class, they would have sort of like nice yoga places around them. They would have fresh grocers and stuff like that around. So you can already see how they've got, like, if we want to use that example of like the UBI system already in place, all they've done in terms of manipulation is, okay, your local store sells a lot of alcohol. Next door to that, you can go and gamble on sports, because that's all you're probably going to be doing most of the time, is watching sports. So they've already set up their infrastructure in terms of like a 15-minute city already, where people can just go and deteriorate themselves. And as Aaron was saying, and make it their choice. And I think that's a key sort of takeaway from it, is put in a way where it's their choice, but it's not their choice. It's been fabricated completely.
Yeah, it makes you think that that's what you really want to do. And I spent a lot of years in pubs. So and I was working at the same time, but man, yeah, you don't really accomplish anything if that's what you're doing. It's just, day to day to enjoy your vice. I've dealt with, I had a relationship with an addict, and that was really rough, seeing that day to day just to get a vice. It doesn't get people anywhere. We need, what's funny is, because all of these things that are happening is it's gonna make us better. Those that make us through it. They played some big cards. They've got bigger cards in store. This is, it's constant bombardment. Every time you look up, there's something, something new to panic about, and people are getting even complacent to that, which is interesting as well. I think that might even be something that they're modeling into us, is to, because we're so used to, oh, hey, there's this big news story and you got to freak out about it. And that calms down a little bit. And then something else is already there to freak everybody out. I think eventually we'll all be desensitized to their nonsense. But that's probably playing into an agenda that they have anyway.
Do you think, with the growing people who are awakening and becoming desensitized to the mainstream narrative, and the people who are so fixated on the mainstream narrative, and you can say anything to them and you can't change their mind, do you think the people who are awakening will end up setting up like a parallel society or economy next to the people who are as far away from as possible, hopefully? But yeah, so like a parallel economy or a society just away from all of that, where we can just like live a normal life.
Yeah, I think that has to happen. And in a lot of ways, what we're doing right now is part of it. And this is just minimal. We're replacing something that isn't really necessary. We're replacing their media. And as somebody that went to school for media, we don't really need it. Everybody in media thinks that they're so important. We're not. We're just, but there's, definitely that has to happen. If that doesn't happen, then we're doomed. So look at it like this, get yourself somewhere away from the metropolis, because that's where most of the tyranny is going to be coming down from, and then find ways to be less and less reliant on them. And that's really hard for me in the industry that I'm in, but I think that's what everybody has to do if they want to make it to the next step, which you might not even like the next step, because it's probably going to be some hardship. You probably won't have access to the luxuries that we have now.
Yeah, I think that's a key point in it, because we've spoken about it before. And when you do think of this new economy being set up, it's not going to be as convenient as the economy, the society, the system that we're in today. But then you've got to remember that the convenience that they're giving us is the killer at the end of it. So that's one thing people need to bear in mind, that where the luxuries of convenience might feel good, they're not good. They're not good at all. They're probably the complete opposite. I've got a quick question. So you've touched on being in media, and then obviously you're a truck driver. What's the reason for that transition like? Is that you just got sick of media?
Back then, when I was telling you earlier about when I was listening to Alex Jones all the time, I was still working in mainstream news radio. And it's funny because we have monitors where you can listen to other stuff while the show's going on. And I've got Rush Limbaugh on the radio, and I'm playing the commercial breaks for it, while at the same time I'm listening to Alex Jones or David Icke, or or one of the guys from back in the early 2000s, whenever a ton of people woke up then. That was a real big moment. I had to drop out of it then, and I guess, like, at this point I would say I'm better equipped for it, or at least older, and have a I'm not as overwhelmed and thinking that people that I'm talking to might be lizard people, because yeah, I found ways to spot the people that I shouldn't be talking to as well, that and I don't know if they're lizards or not, but there is definitely something going on with people. After that, whenever I bailed out of radio, that was 2005, 2006, and I went and lived in New Zealand for a year, and then I came back and was and just did a bike taxi. It's a 3-wheeled bike with a carriage in the back for passengers, and that was fine because it's outside of the system. It wasn't anything that that was official. I didn't have a regular paycheck, anything like that, and you make as much as you work, really. So I thought that I was getting around everything by staying out of the system. And whenever this virus panic hit, because it was really the panic, it wasn't the virus. The panic hit, and they shut down all the sports games, all the concerts, everything that I made money at. And I just thought, well, okay, well, what's needed? What is something that is never going to go away? And I think it could go away with the AI stuff. I think really what's going to happen is that they're just going to send everything on rail at some point. They might not even call it rail, or it might not look like rail, but it's virtually going to be rail. They're going to haul a huge amount of freight from one area, and then it'll be distributed by electric things, maybe. I think that they're going to need a new power source for their schemes. But yeah, I just jumped into trucking at that point, and I was already a traveler. During that pedicab time, I was going all over the country with it, doing festivals and things like that, and I've spent time riding bikes across the country and hitchhiking and things like that. So I'd already been good at traveling, and I've kind of got the perfect job in this industry. I work for a bigger company, so whenever people quit or get fired, they leave the equipment somewhere. I go get it and bring it back. So I'm already good at living on the road. So I end up in airplanes and hotels all the time, and that's that's all like something that I've been comfortable with for a really long time.
Right. Okay. Cool. So yeah, I mean, working in the system. Just to go on that point for a sec, because I think it is so hard to work outside the system. I would say it's probably next to impossible unless you build up a following somehow. But even to build up the following, you need to work the system to be able to build a following in a quite a weird way. So I mean, for example, like I work self-employed in marketing, and whereas originally I thought, oh yeah, I'm self-employed, I must be out of the system. You soon realize that you're not out, out of the system. You're still, in one way or another, you're constantly always contributing towards the system. So I guess it gets more and more exciting when you look at what Aaron was talking about with the sort of alternative society, because you're like, right, that's a new system where you can pick up and sort of plug yourself in there and feel more embedded, which will take time. But then it's like, well, who's going to lead this system or new society? Because we've all got major trust issues. So I guess where I'm going with this is, my question is around Elon Musk, because he seems to be the king of free speech, but I I trusted him, then I didn't trust him, then I trusted him again. Now I just really don't trust him. There's definitely something with that character which is off, and I'm scared because a lot of people who have woken up are like, right, I'm awake. Let me get out of the system. Will look to Elon Musk, and I've seen a lot of people all look at Elon Musk like, oh my god, he's free speech king, but they're running themselves into a different part of the same system. I feel like. But what are your thoughts around that? And will Elon Musk come?
Well, we do need people like Elon Musk, and we need somebody that says, well, hey, if you know this, if this thing that we think is good, and Twitter's probably really not good, but this thing that we think is good is performing bad, let's just buy it. If we have people like that, then that's great, and I am happier with Twitter now that he has it. I don't trust him at all. He's basically, like, he grew up rich. His father owns a diamond mine. His brother's into all of this, bug food kind of stuff. His mom is she's some sort of weird occultist, and yeah, so he wants to put brain chips in people, and that's a huge red flag. And I've heard people that I love and respect say that, well, if it's from Elon, I'll trust it. I'm like, dude, come on, you don't want to trust that guy. And these people are also made, so they come up in these wealthy families a lot of times, but they're made too, because like it, that Facebook came from DARPA. It was LifeLog before it was Facebook, and then they put Mark Zuckerberg in front of it. He was somebody that they created out of the blue, and then they've got Elon to front this Twitter thing because that's what he wants to do. And cool, they're gonna have a cage match, and I don't care who wins. I hope both of them hurt each other a lot, though. But yeah, it's just,
is that actually happening?
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah. It's a publicity stunt, and I don't want to pay attention to it, but I also do. So there's
Right?
plenty of there's junk food for our minds, of course.
Think about that cage fight. This must just be the way my thinking is now. But as soon as they announced it, I was like, everyone really needs to look at what else is going on in the world when that cage fight is taking place, because they're planting it in right now to do. Everything's leading to something big anyway. So if they're trying to distract us with something crazy and just pretty much stupid, then there's definitely gonna be something that's going on in the world at that time.
Yeah, maybe that'll be the day that Bill Gates releases the mosquitoes. He's already done that, but
we could probably go to Bill Gates, but we're going to save that for a little bit later, I think, because I can go on for a while.
Just going back to something you mentioned at the beginning, you said you used to be a libertarian, but you're no longer libertarian. What's your reasoning behind that?
Well, a lot of people. Well, first of all, I just had this one in a recent conversation, where a libertarian argument can be made for just about everything. So what does it even mean anymore? I listen to Pete a lot, and Pete Quinones, and I basically followed his footsteps in this, in this whole journey into, I guess, what they call post-libertarianism, and it was a big conversation that he had with Matt Erickson about Christianity, or sorry, libertarianism being Christianity without Christ, and that was the footstep into this whole thing. A bunch of guys, of course, libertarian guys, had a fit about all of this stuff, but I continue to listen and enjoy this trip. The other thing, whenever all of this tyranny came down, people were making apologies for corporations. The corporations are the ones that are terrorizing us right now. So, do you want to side with the corporations? I don't think you should be so sure in this. that it's all an orchestrated thing. It's why they Klaus Schwab always says public-private partnership, that they've got their guys in these corporations. It's how they're going to roll out the central bank digital currency. And I think that that's another thing that is really big in the footsteps of this whole mess. It's required for everything to go along as it will. They have to change the money. That's what the virus was really all about. And so I think they're going to roll it out just like they rolled out the EU, celebrating 50 years of central bank digital currencies, a week or two after they announced them, because our money has been fake for such a long time, and really integrating it into being something even more fake is not that, it's not that hard. It's just an easy next step. But yeah, I really think that as far as the ideal of way of things that should be run, you shouldn't have the doors open to bad behavior so much. And I don't like the idea of a government telling people how to be moral, but I also don't like the idea of promotion of things that are destructive to a society.
I guess it's finding that balance, right? And that's what the key to life is in general, is finding the right balance. And at the moment, it seems very much off balance. That's why everyone feels so sort of uncomfortable at the moment, because it is a really uncomfortable feeling what's going on.
Well, this all happened seconds after they made gay marriage legal. It's like all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, transition your kids now. So,
That's true.
Or your teacher will do it first.
And then what you say about the central banks as well, it is literally all they need to do is copy the data that's in one system, the banking system, and then paste it into the central banking system. And it could have probably already be happening right now, because it's that easy of a transition. The banks are all going to be involved some way or another in this crazy scheme. So it's literally we could be on it right now without even knowing it, and then it's just a sort of flick of the switch to say a rebrand of your money is now.
Yeah, well, you're already seeing it, aren't you? Because when you go to like the big chain supermarkets, a lot of them don't take cash anymore.
Yeah, and that's illegal in the United States. And guess where you can only use a card and in order to pay for your fees? The national parks. So if you go to a national park, you can't pay in cash, although the cash says on it, it has words that say this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. It says that on the bill. But the national parks are the ones that are saying, no, you can't come in here because you don't have fake money from the banks.
So is it a law then? So apart from the parks, obviously you can't be card only or whatever.
It was supposed to be, but I'm not sure how they're getting around it. I'm sure that there had to have been some decision made to where that doesn't hold up in court anymore. Is my guess, is that some case made it to where that was okay. I don't know, or maybe it's just like they do with everything, everything that they've done that just doesn't make sense, they just justify it with COVID, right?
Yeah, since COVID, a lot of places are only accepting card because they used the COVID as saying cash was dirty and carried the virus as well. But I'm seeing, do you know, you might not know, Ando, but there's a supermarket in the UK called Aldi. I think they're in the US as well. But they've opened up Aldi Local, which is a smaller version of the supermarket. And it's like an Amazon Fresh store where there's no staff, and you scan a QR code. You walk in, you pick up your items, and just walk out the shop, and it pays does a free bank account straight out. So I guess we'll see a lot more of those popping up especially in the bigger cities.
Yeah, I've been to one in the Chicago airport. They have a store like that that's all run off of you go to the thing, you scan your credit card, I guess, and yeah, that must be how it works. You walk in, you just grab your stuff and go, and then get a receipt sent to you.
Mm. Yeah, we're going to see more and more stuff like that popping up. But then at the same time, I suppose where I'm located at the moment, it's a bit easier to sort of just support local businesses as much as you can. But like that's running thin because they're just closing down all over the show. So it's going to get to a point where you can't even support local businesses. Local businesses are probably at the end. Like in England anyway. There's even like I don't know if you've been to England before.
I haven't. My stepdad is from England, so I have some English perspectives in my life, and I guess and I lived in one of their commonwealths for a year, so there's
Oh
that.
right, okay. Yeah, so he's probably spoke to you about the pub culture that we've got over here because the pub culture is crazy. But when you go out and suppose when I was younger and I couldn't even drink, you would go down the street and see so many pubs. But then now you go down the streets and all of these pubs are just closing left, right, and centre. But what's coming up is sort of like more established bars.
Yeah, like chain bars.
Chain bars are coming up a lot more. So that's something that kind of hits home definitely when you're in England because you're like, it's the end of the pub era. Like all I've ever heard about and all I've ever known is England has a pub culture, and it's now coming to the end of that era, and it's being replaced with chains. It's not a pretty sight, I guess.
Yeah, that's thousands of years probably of those pubs. I'm sure that it's been a really long time that was part of English culture, and yeah, that I'm seeing that a lot. That was the thing about people talk about the money transfer, how it went from the bottom to the top, and of course Amazon and Walmart and all of these brands survived that situation really well because they were the only places that you were allowed to go to, and yeah, that was kind of, they had an extra layer there um of help from the system. And I know that there was cases I was hearing about where people were not allowed to buy seeds at Walmart, and that's kind of interesting there. They just put tape around the seeds and said
Oh, I
essential items
saw
only.
this. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I saw this. And then, yeah, I was looking into that further, and they weren't allowed to buy books. They weren't allowed to buy educational things. They were only allowed to go and buy, essential items.
And what they consider essential. Yeah. Just what they consider you essential. That's that was another thing that happened during that. Is I'm essential. I had a piece of paper in my truck that if I were to get pulled over for something, that I could prove that my activity was essential, and I never had to use it. No one ever asked me for it, but the fact that that existed during that time was crazy.
Yeah, just the whole scheme of it all is it's actually like sometimes I just sit and think back to it because when you're in the moment, you don't actually think about it the same way you do upon reflection. But just sitting back and reflecting on it, it was they would put some crazy measures in place.
Yeah, back to Alex Jones. Right when this started, and as far as Alex Jones goes, I like Alex Jones. I respect Alex Jones. I don't listen to every single thing he puts out, and I do think that he is somewhat controlled. And so he's in his place for a reason, just like I was talking about Musk and Zuckerberg and just all these characters, Tucker, you name it, all these guys, that they all have their reason. There's a reason why they're the the main characters in this whole situation.
I did suspect
But
that from Alex because he's a big Trump supporter, and I know Trump got attacked a lot by the media, but I still think he's part of the establishment in some way.
oh yeah,
And
oh
I
yeah,
thought Alex being a supporter of Trump is in a way him supporting the establishment, which seems to not align with what he usually goes for.
Yeah, there's so many people involved in this. Really, anybody that you can name off the top of your head, anybody that gets a lot of headlines is all involved in this. And Trump being one of the main ones. It's, we know that Trump enabled this entire situation, and that's a thing that, the alternative media constantly talks about, is that, okay, well, he did do the warp speed thing, and a lot of the things that he says sound like a solution, but did we actually get any of that stuff whenever he did have the power? And why should we give him power back if he doesn't know how to do anything with it? And the whole thing really, though, is I think that he's being run. He's obviously being run as far as I can tell, and he does a really good job with it. He's one of the best of the best. But whenever the panic of the Rona came out, I had listened to Alex Jones back in the day, back in 2004 or 5, whenever I was listening all the time, and he said that they would control us with a virus, and then and you definitely didn't want to take the thing that came, the vaccine. You definitely didn't want to take that, and I was like, okay, well, this is what Alex was talking about all those years ago, like almost 15 years ago. I was hearing that this would happen, and sorry, phone mount fell off. But yeah, the you definitely don't want to do that, and sure enough, I saw it happen in person. So I guess he was right about something. He's actually right about a lot of stuff, because most of his sources are prime sources, and it's the interpretation that people freak out about, because he is using the big five and all the other corporate news in order to tell a lot of the stuff that goes on his site. These people openly admit their plans. It's like, whenever you look at all this stuff from the World Economic Forum, they're just openly telling you this stuff.
Yeah. And then they're just assuming that a lot of the population are a bit too dumb to realize what it is, sadly.
Do you think they chose Alex because of his wacky and crazy persona? The average person would think he's talking crazy.
Well, I don't know. I think that really helps him a lot. I mean, that's part of his brand. That's part of the reason why he has such a huge audience. He does it really well. And there's another character in this, is Rogan. Rogan's one of the people that legitimized him, and he's always gatekeeping information. So I mean, when really you look at anybody, they're somehow embroiled in this, and I I wouldn't be surprised if some people are unintentionally embroiled in this, and they're not getting any sort of kickback for it. They're just they're just doing what they need to do, and maybe they get guided every now and then. I always wonder about that. Is did they threaten Alex's kids? Because that could be a way to get to somebody, but maybe they didn't even have to.
Yeah, it's true because I know when I listen to Rogan sometimes, definitely since he got the Spotify deal, since he got that Spotify deal, I started listening to him with a little bit of a different ear, and you can see um, it's not fully fluid, the conversation some of the time that he's having with people. He is a bit skeptical about what he is talking about, and not so much what he's talking about, but how he's talking about it. You can see it's not as fluid as it probably once was when he was a bit of on a smaller scale.
Right. I heard that Graham Hancock had some episode that he was talking about some free energy kind of situation, and that Rogan wouldn't let it come out. And so that's happened since the Spotify thing. And yeah, so there's opposition, controlled opposition, and no matter what, just realize that you're in an op, and the circumstances around some of these people, you can like some of the things that they do. You don't have to, you don't have to worship at the altar of Elon or any of these characters.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. What do you think about a Bohemian Grove? Since you're Alex Jones fan, or he helped you come to where you are today, what are your thoughts on Bohemian Grove? Because it's something I've heard about a lot, obviously, but I've never really properly looked into it.
Well, I mean, that all that footage in there was real for sure, and it still happens annually. One of my exes tried to pull up to it and got turned away by some Secret Service people, or maybe they weren't Secret Service. They were something though. They turned her away. Um, yeah, I mean that they definitely have these meetings. I mean, there's the the one of the main things that it's funny because what led me a lot of ways to Christianity was seeing what these guys are up to and how it's always an occultic ritual, things that require sacrifices, etc. And their symbols that they throw out all the time. They're always throwing their occultic symbols and everything. It's okay, well, if the bad guys are real, hopefully the good guys are real, right? So then I started looking more deeply into that and understanding that Satan is the god of this world, and that's why these people get rewarded, and that's why they live the way they do. They're putting all these horrible things out there on purpose, and they've got a bigger agenda, and it all involves us being their pawns, and I don't like that, and I don't think anybody should.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed since I started this journey is how much satanic symbolism is in just mainstream movies and music. It's so like there's so many references to Satan, and even when they talk about God or Jesus, it's always in a negative way. They have a curse in that, saying "Oh my God" or Jesus Christ, like in a negative way. Though, if they're shocked about something.
Yeah, that's the way that things are promoted. I mean, they're running their stuff on in the mainstream. It's really out in the open, and yeah, that's why it's always a promotion of something terrible. And why you see these, this thing right now that's happening as far as this movie that came out. You're finding out that there's pedophile rings in the United States. Well, hey, it's been going on for a really long time, and this is adding some more light to it. And the whole Epstein thing that comes out, all of that stuff is occultic. That stuff is, like there's not anything sexy about a child. There's nothing sexy about that. This is all for purposes of satanic rituals. That's what's going on here. That's pretty obvious. There's nothing that there's no pleasure that they get from it except for the depravity of doing something terrible to an innocent person.
Hmm. So do you think with the I don't know how we want to say it for YouTube, but whatever. So these P rings that they've got going on, do you think that's like a because the way I look at spirituality at the moment, on a positive light, is like I'm leveling up in positive ways, and as I level up, I unlock new parts of my brain which I didn't even know were there. Do you think from the satanic side of it, as they level up, they unlock darker parts of the brain, which involves this sort of uh, stuff that makes them feel like, well, for me to level up, I need to find attraction in this, or I don't really know how to put this thought out there without it just sounding weird, but you get what I mean, right? That they level up into a point where they're like, well, this is what I need to do, and then they're sort of brainwashed by Satan or by the rituals to think this is how I level up.
They're letting demons in. If you have an idea of level up, it's they're accepting more entities into themselves, and maybe that comes with benefits that we get to see out here in the world to them. Maybe they're making contracts all the time, and those contracts require sacrifice, and really like to do. I mean, they probably don't even like to do it necessarily. They like the power that comes from it, and that's why this stuff is continuing to go on.
Do you think we'll ever get Epstein's list, or do you think they'll either release it at a date where it's normalized to a standard that no one will care, or do you think it will just get buried under and we'll move on from that list? Because it's something I don't want to let go of, because I feel like it's because of Hollywood so embedded in our culture and so many role models are in Hollywood. And I've got role models that are in Hollywood from TV shows. So personally, I would like to know, but then the rest of society need to know the people that you're watching and looking up to on TV. This is what route they're going down.
Well, if you go to antineoconreport.com, that's Ryan Dawson's website, and he has a bunch of people that are tied to Epstein, a list that is big enough. It's probably not as comprehensive to tell you every single person that Epstein's ever had a shady interaction with, but he's got people that are very powerful on that list, and they're not going to get investigated. They didn't even search the island. The island's still sitting there. There's probably still evidence there. They're covering up as much as they can possibly cover up on this.
Do you know if they're are they protecting the island? Like, if me or you was to go there, would we get turned away?
Yeah, Luke Radowski went there, and he ran around the island for a little bit, and then some people started coming for them in golf carts, so they got back in the boat and got away.
Wow. Why do you think Netflix released a documentary about him?
Well, Netflix has released a lot of documentaries about things. I think one of the big things that Netflix does is, they'll get you interested in some things, because there is a what do you call it, conspiratainment, I guess, aspect to all of this stuff, and it's things that people naturally want to know about, or they've got this friend who's constantly talking about what really went on, and I'm like, oh, cool. Well, maybe I can learn a little something about this, so I can actually have a conversation with this person. And they'll give you nuggets, but it's never perfect. It's never going to be something like what Ryan would put out as far as investigation on these situations. You're not going to find Ryan's documentaries on Netflix, but Netflix is enough to quell your curiosity, and then you don't really look any further after that. Ideally, in their situation, it's I believe Netflix is one of their CEOs is a relative of Edward Bernays, so it's kind of funny how that works out.
Yeah, I guess it's not just enough to like you said, like, pique your interest, show you, make you feel like, oh, you've got it covered. You know the knowledge. You don't need to turn over any more stones. Or it's Netflix is good at where it's ended, so then you move on to the next thing, rather than, I know how I came up with into the world of conspiracies when through my teenage years I would go on YouTube and watch, I don't know, just some random conspiracy theory, and then you end up on this rabbit hole about 6 hours later into lizard people. So Netflix doesn't have the opportunity to do that, so you're quite controlled in what you're consuming.
So going back to pretty much the start of the pod when I asked you, I think Cameron asked you what awakened you, and you said it was around 2002, around 9/11.
2003, yeah.
2003,
but it was 9/11. Yeah. Well, it actually started, I think, investigating. I was looking into AIDS being a psyop at that time, and that led me to InfoWars, which led me to Alex Jones, which led me to all the all the 9/11 stuff, and I was already sus. So since I was already had suspicions about the day, and especially the way that they they basically got to go to war with exactly who they wanted to go to war with, whenever none of the hijackers had that lineage. So that was kind of an open indicator for everybody, and I was against the war at that time.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering if you can you explain to us and the audience any the the theory you think is most sort of accurate around 9/11.
I think that the planes were hijacked remotely, and that the guys were put on the plane in order to have to have people on the plane that they could blame for it. So they had these characters, these people that had learned how to fly. They weren't good at flying, and then they have this software called the Promise software, and it can backdoor into everything. So it just hacked in, boom, plane hits the building, and some people aren't gonna like that. I think that the building was pre-wired, but I think it was. So it just appears to me like it's controlled. It doesn't, it doesn't look like it was that it's chaos, that it's just falling from that. So I think they wanted the building to go down. It was pre-wired. Planes hit it, so we got to see the circumstance that caused it to fall, and then it fell. It fell exactly how they wanted it to fall.
Do you think as well with 9/11 they used Islam as we've seen in the West over the past 20 years? Has been a real war on religion to try and sort of suppress it. Do you think they used Islam because Islam is quite a powerful religion? They used it to turn people against Islam.
I think that, yeah, you're always gonna find that as as an issue. The Crusades have never been resolved, but there is one of those three religions seems to really love pitting the other two against each other, so that they never look at them. But I think a lot more people are looking at that group that had, their Secret Service was quite involved in the 9/11 situation, but for some reason it's never mentioned. It's never ever mentioned whenever you're talking about at least in the mainstream, it's constantly being mentioned that they had their hand in it. So but it's just a typical one group pitting their enemies against each other all the time. I I personally don't have an issue with them. I just want them to do what they do in their countries and us to do what we do in our countries. I'm not really big on, on just mixing everybody up. I think that's where all the conflict is coming from these days.
The clash of cultures, right?
Mm.
Yeah, especially whenever it comes to religion.
Mm.
Yeah, because people are very they're strict on what their religions taught them in the past, and yeah, a lot of people don't like to adapt. We're seeing that with in the UK with the immigration crisis that you've probably seen on the internet that everyone's talking about, and how the fact that Rishi just isn't addressing it as if he wants it to be a crisis for as long as it possibly can. So if you look at some of the way, like they're giving hotels, but the way they're living in the hotels, they're turning these, I think they're like 3-star, 4-star hotels, basically turning them into slums, just from how long they've been there as well. So
Just relating that to the point you made about depopulation before, do you think they're increasing immigration and illegal immigrants into Western nations or developed countries to make you feel as if they're overpopulated because schools and doctors are oversubscribed? So in a citizen's head, you're thinking, oh crap, like there's too many people, we do need to depopulate, and people get behind the idea.
I think it's multifaceted. One thing, like I said, the heavy fist of depopulation is war. That's the one that's the meat grinder, and that's where, you know, you're seeing that rubber meet the road in France right now, that there's, you know, open hostility on the street. But yeah, it's, you know, it is, there's a million reasons that they're doing it, but it always keeps, you know, keeping two sides fighting with each other is, or a multitude of sides fighting with each other. Like I was saying the other day, is that, you know, it's like you take an ant farm and you put different kinds of ants in there. Whenever the ants fight, they're going to fight against ants that aren't like themselves, and they're not gonna be mad at the person that shook the ant farm. And that, you know, of course, that is who we should be angry with. We should definitely be angry with the overlords. But whenever it comes down to the rubber meeting the road, you know, if you got angry ants everywhere, that are not the same as you, then you're going to, and they're coming after you, you're coming after them, and that's the main reason why they keep us like this. It's all plays into the broader sense of things.
So we do a podcast with a guy called Mike. We do like a monthly series with him. He's got a podcast called No Sound Bites Allowed. No Sound Bites Allowed. And he is predicting a civil war in America in, was it 2027?
Yeah, 27.
2027. What are your views on that?
I could see that. I really enjoyed y'all's episode with him. I listened to that the other day, and yeah, he's a really smart guy. I don't know. I don't like to give specific dates on things. You know, like one thing, we're talking about psyops earlier, and how, you know, like the alien thing coming out recently, and we all know Bluebeam, right? We all know about it. So they've teased this out so many times. They're teasing out as many psyops as they can tease out. But I don't know if that's to like increase the complacency or what, because whenever the Civil War, really whenever any war starts, like right now, we're probably already in World War III. It just hasn't been openly declared and said, you know? And the Civil War may have started with the great fentanyl riots of 2020. You know, it could have started then, but who really knows? I mean, really, you could even say that the Civil War started in 2016. That was a really hot time too. Um, I don't know how crazy it's going to get as far as violence on the streets. Hopefully, what I think though is that when you pick the area that you're in, you got to pick an area that is not going to be run by the government, and an area that's not going to be run by the gangs. You want an area that's run by your neighbors. And so when it comes down to it, you got to protect those people and cultivate that, instead of being in a situation like the government thing will be just, you know, they'll be dumping in rations, and, you know, it'll be lockdown security crazy, you know. And then the gang situation, that could actually, I would think the gang situation could be better off than dealing with the government.
What was it that triggered in 2016?
Oh, just the Gamergate is really kind of like the salvo that started all the culture war in the United States. Not that there hadn't been a culture war the whole time, but that was the big one that really kicked things off.
Yeah, so I guess if you are in the middle of a civil war, it's the start of it, so no one's going to say, "Oh, we're in civil war now." Like, it takes time for it to develop into something crazy if it does develop that far, right?
Yeah, I still don't understand the Civil War. I don't understand how so many people joined into it. That's what gets me there. Just because, you know, if somebody told me, you know, I'm from Texas, if they told me that I have to go fight Louisiana, I'm gonna, like, no. I don't want to fight Louisiana. I mean, I'm cool with Cajuns. But I don't know how they built the propaganda that led up to it, that got these people that would kill for each other, especially when the culture was virtually the same at that time. I mean, that the North was more industrial and the South was more ag, but still it was almost the same. And you drive through a lot of that northern area, you're going to see a bunch of ag anyway. So
Yeah, because we tend to, as humans, look at stuff from a tribal perspective, but I guess when you can't join the dots, you wonder what subconscious tribal things have gone on, like without us realizing in that sort of situation. So, why do you think they're releasing the information now about UFOs? Why is now a good time for us to know that?
I think it's just another distraction. There's a bunch of things, a bunch of programs that they run, that they've run for years, that are going to cause things that we see in the sky to look like something that we'd never seen before. They've been running these programs for ages. I think it's just more of that. I don't think that we're in contact with something from outer space. I do think that there's demons all over this world, and that there's beings that we don't understand. There was a time whenever giants walked the earth, I fully believe that. So there's definitely things that we don't see or understand, but I don't think it's aliens, as in like the alien that we see. Which, if you look at Aleister Crowley's work, you can see he illustrated one of the demons that he summoned, and it looks just like one of those aliens. So it's very, he calls them the Lamb, Lam. So I think that it's probably something more on those lines.
Well, in my sort of recent rabbit holes around UFOs because of all the news, every sort of rabbit hole I've been going on recently has been leading me to Antarctica. Do you have any information or any theories on what Antarctica is, what it's covering, what's past it? Any theory whatsoever? Because I'm getting fed a lot of different theories, and they are super super interesting, and some of them seem to have more legs than others, but I wouldn't really write any of them off at this moment in time.
I really like Antarctica because I feel like you let your imagination just go like wild with what could be out there.
Yeah, somebody made the point that that the one thing that all of these countries, because all the countries have this Antarctic agreement to keep people from going down there, and I think that that's pretty interesting. It's definitely an interesting rabbit hole. I haven't delved into it as much as I should. I think it's neat. And yeah, there's a lot of things that they won't tell you. And also, if there is land beyond, it plays into this false scarcity thing. Everything is built on this false scarcity, and just every bit of conflict and thing that they're trying to push, as far as this climate BS that they're trying to use to justify everything. It's all built on some sort of scarcity, and if we find out that there is more, then they can't use the scarcity excuse anymore. So there's that.
Yeah, because you could look at it that they're scared of the Antarctica melting to reveal land, basically. Because the recent theory that I came across was that Atlantis actually, when it sank, it moved to where Antarctica is, and there was a spell put on it, which turned it to ice.
I don't know about that, but I know that that this melt thing is hype. Things are not melting like they say that they are. That's that's just something that they want so that they can tax you and get us all on a carbon credit system, which will be a lot like the social credit system, just how they like to do their things. More technocracy. That's all it is a
That's
push
how
for that.
that's how they're selling the 15-minute cities, by saying they're more environmentally friendly, because you don't need to go in your car to go to the supermarket or to the doctors.
I was just going to say the way I've looked at everything that's going on, because it's all been such a vast amount of chaos, is it's all just different spokes that for the same wheel, because climate change stuff, the CB central banking system, the Rona, it's all spokes of the same wheel. They're not different issues. You can connect the dots quite easily to them all, and we have them today, kind of.
Yeah, that's it's all the big boot, and it's but we can see now, we can kind of see who's all running everything. There's several groups involved, and luckily, due to all of this stuff, that we get to see the World Economic Forum, but it's definitely more than just them, and there's a lot going on, and you can see all these world leaders all on the same page. I mean, really, would it be different if you just swapped out Trudeau and Macron? If you just put them in, opposite countries, they would run the place exactly the same. And they would run the place exactly the same as, Gavin Newsom's running California into the ground. And that's just how that works.
That's another thing as well. The WEF, like, from what I've read, they've got ties with China, but the narrative in the West is we don't like China, but the WEF have ties with them. So it kind of made me. Have you read 1984? Yeah, it kind of made me think about that, where they have a prolonged war all the time to feed the narrative to society. Will we have a prolonged war with the East that's just always constantly an ongoing battle, whereas really they're all connected to each other and working with each other in one way or another?
Yeah, they always like to split it into two, and the NATO countries and the BRICS countries will be at odds with each other. They've got China and Russia with the BRICS. They have their own technocracy going on as well, and there's not really a good guy in the situation, but I don't, I'm more opposed to what this NATO culture is doing at this point. Just, the war that they're starting and all of that. I'm not super high on China, but I feel like, okay, so they're gonna fight. They're basically the same thing. I just think that I just I like Russia a little bit more out of all of this. I just do.
Do you think it's because we're more attached to NATO in the sense that we've been brought up to believe that we should trust our government, we should trust these higher establishments that have been put in place? We've been brought up so we can trust them, but we're seeing
we've been let down by them.
Yeah, we feel betrayed. We feel like we can't trust them now. We should be attached to them, but we're not. So then we automatically look at the enemy as not a good guy, but as the better guy, because you're like, well, I know what's going on here, so we must be wrong because we're working out all of the crap that they're doing.
Well, yeah, one side to me is there's the side that's giving little kids hormones, and that's really the thing. I'm seeing that, and I'm like, okay, well, I don't like what these globalists are doing. The other side doesn't seem to be doing that. It seems like that they have a little bit cleaner things in their food. They're putting all kinds of poison in our food. They want us to eat bugs. I mean, this is not a thing that's not out in the open with them. They're definitely promoting that. Whenever it comes time for the UBI and everything like that, people will get bug rations, and I don't like that side of things.
Yeah, I think when the central banks come in, the UBIs come in, because that's all going to be intertwined. I guess that's when, from that point on, when they've stated we're now on central banking digital currency, that's when you'll see the real sort of changes that we're forecasting at the moment happen, because it'll all be on a rating system, right? You've not bought enough bugs. Why are you buying real meat? Why are you buying real grocers food? You need to be buying more bugs. And then obviously that's when they get the control of it all. And it's like, why are you driving your car out of your 15-minute city? Why are you driving your car anyway? Because it runs on petrol. You should need to be using your electric bike and eating these bugs that Bill Gates made for you in a nice packet.
Right. And I'm all for bikes. It's just, I just don't think that they solve all of the problems out there. You know, I think people need to. I think everybody should have one. For the reason that whenever these globalists end up cutting off our petrol, which they intend to do, it's going to help you guys get around. It's going to help people get around a little bit. It's not going to, I've gone across the country on bike, but not everybody's going to be able to do that. But you can at least, get to areas where you can meet other people and solve each other's problems.
Yeah, I like bikes. We'll have to probably go electric bike, and yeah, I guess it's about, I don't know, implementing the small things into your life now. So when things do change, everything's a lot easier for you and you're a lot more comfortable with it all, because it's going to come as a huge shock for a lot of people. Obviously not the likes of us, but at the same time, it could come to a shock to the likes of us if we don't start implementing the things now. And what do you say? Drinking your own Kool Aid. I think that's what Americans say, right?
Yeah, I I think everybody should have at least some food put away. Just have your food, have your ammo, have the things that you need, because anything can happen. This is we're in a really weird territory as far as the way this is progressing, and like your friend Mike said, that there could be civil war in the future, and if there is, you don't want to be caught with your pants down, and you don't want to have to join a side just because they are the side that has the resources, because I think that will be the side that has all this fake money. And if you have to be taken care of by the state, then then they're going to expect things from you, and they're going to sacrifice you for sure. That's what they do.
We definitely, like you, similar to us, we talk about a lot of the darkness of the world. How do you stay positive in today's day? And how would you advise people that are joining this journey, this journey of reality? How would you advise them to keep pursuing the journey and keep revealing the hidden truths of the world? But how would you advise them to stay positive on this journey?
I think I'm naturally positive, and I've been so all of my life. Nobody knows, and just recognize that things could get a lot harder than you expect, and be ready for that mentally. You have that to mentally prepare every single day that yeah, it's bad, but it could get worse. Um, have that in your head, and then also um, pray, and also recognize that what we have in this world is so much, man. We have so much, and people before us didn't have all the cool things that we have. And like I live out of a suitcase because I'm traveling all the time, and all the cool stuff that solves all these problems, it's pretty sweet. So yeah, and then also just recognize that humanity is worth fighting for. And and that by that I mean the souls of humanity are worth fighting for, not the souls of the satanic pedos that run the world. So
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, when you say we have nice things, I mean, you've got to look at it where we're blessed that we have the technology that we're using right now to be able to be awake and to be able to keep pursuing the journey that we are doing because of the great technology that we have. So the journey in itself is a positive.
oh yeah, yeah. Man, there's just so much stuff. I'm looking around at all these things and recognizing them as luxuries, because there's going to be a time where you're going to have to learn. Well, maybe this is all maybe they might have to learn how to reverse engineer some of these things that we're all exposed to. And the generations after us, it will be interesting to tell them about these times. I think that we have to go back in a lot of ways, because a lot of what's causing our problem right now is the technology and luxury and convenience.
Yeah, we've been derailed with it all. Yeah, it's definitely going to be a good story because we're living through a monumental part of history right now. So it's kind of exciting when you look at it that way.
Well, what's cool is that you can go from one day, these times where we're entertained by looking at moving pictures in a tiny box that fits in our hand, and then we'll have to find ourselves entertained by the flicker of a fire again, just like the like what we came from, what we are.
Mm. But that could also bring us to a life of an eternal happiness, right? Because that's us going back to our natural selves, whereas we're so detached from that at the moment. Like, I know the thrill of if I'm at a barbecue and we light up a fire. There's just a weird thrill that you get just from
You can
seeing
just
that.
stand around and watch that fire all night.
Yeah, have you guys looked into Ted Kaczynski? Oh man, so he just died. I guess it's about a month ago now. But he was the Unabomber, and his manifesto accurately predicts a lot of things, and really does a good job of criticizing the society that we're in. It's understanding his perspective is, I think, he was a super genius. They put him in the MK Ultra program, and he was messed up from that, and then he started apparently mailing these bombs. Some people say that he didn't do all of them, or I've even heard some people say he didn't do any of them, but he had a really accurate prediction of how this all would play out and why technology is really our biggest enemy.
Yeah, I think I did watch his Netflix documentary years ago, and then only recently I've been looking into the MK Ultra project, and I did come across his name again being the Unabomber, but it is something that's on my list to go down more of, because I've heard so many people talk about how interesting his perspective of life was, and obviously you've just vouched for that as well, so something definitely to look into.
Yeah, and as far as solutions go, I think just understanding him is important, and I know it's one of those things. It's definitely out here now, that especially now that he just died, but he was, before he died, it's probably been about 3 or 4 years he's been on the tip of a lot of people's tongues, and I think the reason for that is that we're seeing a lot of his predictions come to fruition.
Right. Yeah, I'll definitely give it a
I'll
look.
have to check that out. Yeah.
Shall we wrap this one up, guys?
Yeah. It's been
Awesome.
really good.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming up, man. This has been great.
Yeah.
Right, guys. See you later. Thanks for listening.
Right. Cheers, guys. See you later.